Hi, welcome to this episode of We Rise Stories of Resilience. In this episode, we have a special guest, Mona Kay, who is also a podcaster of Neurodiverse Love. So, Mona, tell us a little bit about your background, your professional background, and your podcast.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me here. And I look forward to our conversation. I've been doing the podcast since September of 2020, started in the middle of a pandemic, because I wanted to share my story, which we're going to talk about more today. And I'm a social worker. I have 3 degrees in social work, and I've been doing social work for about 40 years now and have done all kinds of things in the field. But I think I'm most proud of what I'm doing right now, which is working with neurodiverse couples and working with the non-autistic or neurotypical partners to help them understand what is going on in their love relationships, because many people don't understand that they're neurodivergent and they struggle because they don't understand how their brain and their body is wired and how to thrive. And some of them are just surviving. So I do coaching and I do the podcast, I do workshops, and I've done 2 conferences online, one in 2023 and one in 2025, called the Neurodiverse Love Conference.
Wow, that is amazing. So, wow, like your podcast, Neurodiverse Love, is been on for a long time.
Yeah.
And I would like to know, tell us a little bit about your story. What made you decide to have this podcast? We'll lead up to that moment.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the shorter version. The shorter version is I was married for 30 years. I was with my ex-husband for 32, and we were separated for about a year and a half before I discovered that we were a neurodiverse couple, that he was autistic, and I didn't know at the time that I was ADHD. I learned that later. And I realized that that could help us understand so much about our relationship. And when I approached him about it, I did it in a not good way. I basically, he was having like a meltdown. We were away for the weekend. And I said, you probably have Asperger's, which is what it was called before. And we got into a fight. He eventually went to go get a kind of assessment. And the psychologist he met with primarily, I think, worked with children. And he said, yeah, you're probably on the spectrum, but so what? So about 9 months later, we ended up divorcing in 2018. And I decided after about 2 years of healing and going for therapy and doing my own work that I knew I wasn't alone. I knew there were other people who were dealing with some of the challenges I had dealt with in my 30-year marriage. And I wanted to tell my story. And our dear friend Olga and I, who she was also at the time, she had dated somebody who was autistic, or we thought was autistic. We just sat in our living room, one of our living rooms, shared our story, and hoped we would be able to help a few people. And fast forward 5 years later, and I think we've had about 400,000 downloads from around 70 countries,
Oh,
which is
wow.
which is really cool. Yeah.
Well, then you know that this is definitely um, a struggle that many people have, and
Yeah.
especially older people figuring out that they are neurodiverse. And, this wasn't really a topic back when I know when I was younger.
Me
So,
either. Yeah.
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 So, looking back, when did you feel, or do you remember when you said something was different about your marriage?
Yeah. From the beginning. From the beginning, I knew there was something different, but I was 21 when we met and I was 23 when we married. So it was like I was still very young.
Yeah.
And I do remember 4 years in, I was ready to divorce my ex-husband, and I asked him for a divorce, and he begged me to stay. And I remember that night. It was a long time ago, but I remember that night, and I remember him taking the palm of his hand and like hitting his forehead.
Mm.
And I couldn't understand why he was doing that. Like he was self-harming, and I had to stop him. And he never did that again, but there were other things that happened in our relationship that I didn't understand. I didn't understand about him, and I didn't understand about myself. And we had a lot of communication challenges. We had a lot of situations where he would shut down and almost go mute. And that's something that happens in neurodiverse relationships. It's from, a nervous system overwhelm. And then he wouldn't respond to things that I would ask him or want him to do. And then a few days later, he'd come back and he would respond. And then I learned about processing speeds are very different for neurodiverse couples. And I would scream at him and I would yell and I would get emotional. And then he would get flooded and he would shut down again. And, it was a pattern, and we loved each other so much. And yet we couldn't get out of this, what became a toxic cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean there was no communication as far as with both of you having these neurodiverse issues? It was hard for communication, I'm sure. So go ahead.
Yeah, it was different. So I wanted to process things and I wanted to understand his emotions. I wanted to get deep. I wanted to understand what he was feeling. And he wasn't necessarily in touch with that. And it's a term called alexithymia that a lot of people aren't familiar with, that and a lot of autistic people have it, and it's they don't understand their own emotions and they don't understand the people in their lives' emotions. So it can feel like, they're gaslighting you or they're neglecting you, but they really don't understand. And then communication for a lot of autistic folks, it's for, logistics. It's to get the facts out and then to move on. But for a lot of us who are ADHD or non-autistic, communication is a way of connecting. It's a way of bonding. It's a way of processing. It's a way of getting deep with somebody.
Yeah.
So we had very different like agendas in so many areas, but we didn't know. We
Yeah.
didn't know that's why we were causing each other so much pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, after having a conversation with you, had the realization that maybe I was in my first marriage married to someone who was neurodiverse because all the same, not being able to communicate, processing time,
Mm.
very similar. So I think this message and your podcast really helps others understand what they're facing. So
Thank
that's really hard. 30 years.
Yeah.
30
Yeah.
years. You are really brave to endure so much time with such hard communication. And how did you learn that it was neurodiversity?
Well, actually, it was our friend Olga who was talking to me about the guy she was dating, because Olga and I worked together. And she said, the guy I'm dating is a little bit different. And I said, how? And she's like, I think there's something different about him neurologically. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then as she started sharing all these things she was experiencing with him, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my husband. He does the same exact things. And the crazy thing is, I'm a social worker with 3 degrees in social work, been in the field for 40 years. Never had I ever heard about autistic adults.
Yeah,
Never.
yeah,
And so it's called the lost generation. Those folks who are like 35 or so and older would never have been tested when they were in school. Whereas kids that are in school now, if they seem neurodivergent to a teacher or a guidance counselor, they'll get tested, they'll get assessed, but not back, I'm 61, not back when I was in school and when you were in school. So the more she started sharing about this guy, the more I realized I think my husband at the time is autistic. So I started doing my own research and I realized everything that I was seeing online fit everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not know this?
Yeah.
With all my schooling and all my years in the field, I think for like maybe 10 minutes in one of my what was called a DSM course, I learned about autism for children, with children, but nothing about adults.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it was a shock to me too. Yeah,
Um, so you were separated for a year and a half, was it?
actually 2.5
Two and
years.
a half years.
Yeah. We were separated for 2.5 years. And the thing is, when things aren't working out, that something has to change, right?
Mhm.
So I knew the separation was the right thing to do. I just would never recommend to anybody that they spend 2.5 years separated because I lost the essence of myself. I went on Cymbalta, which is an anti-anxiety, anti-depression medication, and I was on it for 4.5 years. I had to quit my job because every time I went into work and people asked me how I was doing, I cried and I had to keep my door closed.
Wow.
I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck
Yeah.
because I loved my husband and I didn't want us to be divorced, but we couldn't seem to find, I guess, a happy medium, but
Yeah.
also understanding, about how to communicate differently and get along differently.
Yeah. That's very difficult. Not just that you were in a neurodiverse relationship, but that divorce in general, coming to that realization that this is not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, during that 2.5 years, was it just separation because you thought maybe you could work through it?
Yeah. Yeah. And we tried, and, we dated each other during that time. We dated other people. And I remember my husband numerous times saying, I really want to figure out how we do this, how I come back into the marriage. And the fact of the matter is, now I realize looking back, he had never lived alone, ever in his whole life. He went from his parents' house to move in with me. We lived together for a year before we got married. And so for the first time in his life, he was living on his own.
Yeah.
For those folks that know somebody who's autistic or neurodivergent, one of the things that's really important, especially for autistic or ADHD folks, is to be able to have their alone time and to be able to decompress and not to have to answer to anybody, and have any responsibilities that anybody else is giving them. So for the first time in his life, he had that.
Yeah.
And I think he had peace in a way he'd never had in his life. And even though we still loved each other and we were dating on and off through the separation, he couldn't figure out how to make it work. And, we went to 3 therapists and none of them knew anything about neurodivergence. I think if they had in our conversations, they would have picked up things and they might have, brought it up. But I actually called all 3 of them after our divorce and asked them if they knew anything about autistic adults, and none of them did.
None
So,
of them did. Yeah.
and yeah,
Do you think now that there's more awareness within, yeah, the mental
yeah,
health
and
field?
yeah, and there's more people getting training, going to workshops, learning through podcasts like mine, and I have a lot of folks who come to my workshops that I do to learn because if you are a therapist or you're a counselor or you're a coach and you're working with couples, you have absolutely seen a neurodiverse couple. You may not know you've seen a neurodiverse couple, but you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, I don't know if you've seen the show Couples Therapy. I think there's been 3 seasons.
I
And
have, but not all of them. Yeah.
okay, so every time I watch that show, I'm looking for a neurodiverse couple. Every single season, there's been at least one. She does not recognize it. She does not bring it up. And I'm like, this is a big issue with this couple, and they don't even know it. They don't know they're a neurodiverse couple. I know. I
Wow.
know. Yeah.
So, I mean, divorce can feel like both an ending and a beginning. Sorry about
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And how did you reframe your story?
Mm. That is such an important question. And it's something that I love talking about in the support groups. I run two support groups for the non-autistic partners, and they're free. So if anybody's interested, they can reach out to me. Yeah. And I've been doing those for almost 5 years.
Well, I tell
Um,
you, we'll put some links in
okay.
the description.
Okay. Fantastic. So for me, I had to take time to heal because on the day that we divorced, we did a simple dissolution of marriage. And for folks that don't know that, there were no lawyers involved. We had to go to the courthouse, stand before a judge, and say that there were irreconcilable differences, and that was the end of our marriage. That day, I had a panic attack. I had to leave the courtroom. I had to walk through the courtroom halls because I didn't want a divorce, but I knew that I had to move forward. And then afterwards, I was a wreck. I was still a wreck. I was crying. I was still on the Cymbalta. And I realized that I wanted another relationship. I did not want to stay single for the rest of my life. I had so much to give to the world as a social worker. I was perpetually an optimistic person, and I had lost that, right? I wanted to heal my body because I was inflamed, I was in physical pain. And so for me, I realized that I needed to have a purpose.
Yeah.
I needed to find a reason to have gone through all that I went through for 32 years, 30 years of marriage and 32 years together. And I think a lot of us don't realize we need a purpose to thrive. Not everybody does, but I did. And I realized that not only was I not alone in experiencing this, but if I could be transparent and tell my story from a real place and not try to sugarcoat anything, I thought, and when we started, it was me and Olga, but I've been doing this myself for about 4 years. I thought that other people would see themselves in me. And so the reframe for me is I could not have been in this marriage for 30 years for only to have loved this man and to have had a daughter with him. There
Yeah.
has to be more.
Yeah.
Every time I've thought of stepping away from doing the work through Neurodiverse Love, I'll get an email from somebody, and I get emails every week. I found your podcast. I was about to divorce. I thought my partner was, or husband or wife was a narcissist or a sociopath. I listened to your podcast. I've been binging it. And now I realize that I'm probably in a neurodiverse relationship. Help, you know? And I know I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do. And I'll do it as long as there are people that want this information.
How inspiring. And this is exactly it.
Yeah.
And that process that you went through is also a process that went through in my mind and the things and the choices I've made to do. And how I pulled myself out of, despair, and depression. That feeling that there is something more that I can do with the wisdom from what I've
Hmm.
learned. I
Hmm.
love that.
Yeah.
That is so inspiring. And you're
Yeah.
doing a great job. Like your podcast is amazing. I hope that everyone that watches this tunes in and listens to all 5 years of it.
It's a lot. It's over 200 episodes.
There's so many great topics, so many
Thank
great
you.
topics.
Thank you.
And this information is so vital because we are dealing with relationships and communication with people, not just in marriages and relationships, but in romantic relationships, but also in workplaces and friendships and so many ways that we can help educate ourselves on communication.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is one of them.
Yeah.
So, what did healing look like for you? Like, what types
Mm,
of things did you do
yeah.
that helped you get through maybe, you know, the first year or more?
Yeah. So many things. First of all, I couldn't have done it without my friends and my family. Like, my sister was there for me nonstop. And thank goodness she lives 30 minutes away. So I could, hang out with her if I needed to. I have an amazing circle of friends. And I always say, even if you just have one person that you can turn to, you need one person that you can go and hang out with and cry and say the same thing over and over again to, because I was in physical and emotional pain. And I couldn't imagine my life after 32 years with this man who I loved still going on and being me thriving and, being successful. And so I'm sure I repeated the same stuff over and over again to my circle of friends and my sister. And they just loved me kind of unconditionally. And those that had been through a divorce, my sister had, and a few friends had, you're going to be okay. It doesn't feel like it now, but you're going to be okay. The other thing was therapy. I mean, I think one of the best therapies for me was somatic therapy, because with somatic therapy, I had trauma in my body that I didn't know I had. Not only did I discover that I was in a neurodiverse relationship, I discovered that my father was autistic and he's been gone since 2005. So there were patterns that were repeated from my childhood into my marriage. And I didn't really realize that. And it was trauma that I had stored in my body. And I think it contributed to my inflammation and also the depression and anxiety and all of that. And so somatic experiencing is the somatic therapy model that I loved. And I went to meet with a therapist, and I only went twice, and it was a godsend.
Wow.
And then I did, yeah, my own meditation. I meditated. I spent a lot of time outside in nature.
Yeah.
I have a beautiful front porch that looks on to about an acre of lots of green, watching the animals and reading. I read a lot to educate myself and inspirational stories. And then I moved my body. I did a lot of walking, a lot of walking. I was walking probably 2 to 3 miles at least 3 days a week. And they say, the research says that when you're stressed and you move your body, it helps complete the stress cycle.
Yeah.
And I think I was stressed every single day.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot.
I agree. Actually, Olga and I talked about this too. Movement is so important. I mean,
Critical.
yeah, and especially hearing that from you, it's really nice to hear that from you. Um, but movement with dance, I can speak for because I'm a dance teacher, but and also been dancing for over 30 years. But dance has really saved me, and it wasn't really the community for me with dance.
Hmm.
It was the ability to move and express myself without words, without having to truly
Hmm.
understand what I was feeling, just to move it out, to move the
Right.
energy. Yeah. That
Yeah. Because the energy
trust.
does get stuck.
Yeah.
It gets stuck.
Yeah, it does.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the same for all of us. Like we need different ways to heal ourselves
Mhm.
and not just one way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I recommend in my support groups. I tell everybody that one of the most important things you can do is learn how to regulate your nervous system, because you will be triggered. And if you don't figure out how to regulate your nervous system and you're triggered, you're constantly going to be in a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And that's a trauma response, right? But if we learn how to create I call it a nervous system regulation toolbox, and I put it on my phone. These are 10 things that I can do, and now they just come naturally. But, so those things that I talked about, the walking, and I would turn on my music, and I would dance. I'm not a good dancer, but I would dance around the kitchen, dance in the living room, just move, you know? And then I joined a gym and I started working out. I wasn't very good, but I did it. Hired a trainer. You know, you have to figure out what's going to help you regulate your nervous system when you're triggered. Because if you can't do that, I don't know how you heal.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah. And also maybe something didn't work for you 2 months after, but maybe it will work for you a year after, like to
Yes.
keep trying, to keep
Yes.
trying different things and maybe go back to that other thing that you felt didn't work for you.
Yeah.
It will work now.
Yeah. 100%.
What did you have you learned anything from your guest on the podcast?
Oh, so
I
much.
share so much.
So much. Yeah. I mean, I really, really learned. I've had some really successful couples, you know, who have figured it out. And they're younger, I have to say. You know, and so they didn't have 20, 30, and I've even had people who've been married for 50 years come to my support groups because I do a couple support group too. I learned that it's really, really, really important to understand how you each define communication, what kind of emotional needs you have. Do you have sensory sensitivities? That's a big one in neurodiverse relationships. What are your needs around physical and sexual intimacy? How do you process information? How do you adapt to change? I learned so much from all of my guests, and then, you know, different strategies and tools to deal with any challenges in all of those areas. And there's so many other areas that, you know, I've talked about. But I've had autistic people on the podcast. I've had ADHD folks, people who are autistic and ADHD. And until 2013, you couldn't be diagnosed with both.
Wow.
So you were either autistic or you were ADHD, but now there's so many people who are being diagnosed with both, and it's making sense to them why they've had even more challenges than maybe somebody they knew who was only autistic or ADHD. I've learned from so many therapists and coaches who've worked with couples and individuals. I've talked to young folks who are neurodivergent, older folks who are neurodivergent, women, men, non-binary folks, you know, all over the world, literally all over the world. And it's just the thing is, everybody who doesn't know that I've talked to is struggling or was struggling and has experienced some kind of trauma, whether they're the neurodivergent person or they're not neurodivergent. There's been so much bullying for the neurodivergent folks, and there's trauma in their bodies. They don't know how to heal. They're constantly triggered. So I've learned so many people's stories and then how they've turned their stories into a healing journey. Or somebody who became a therapist or a coach and said, I've had this life experience like me. I want to teach other people how to do it differently. And I've stayed in my marriage, or I've left my marriage. But I've had quite a few who've stayed in their marriage and they want to give back by sharing through coaching and therapy.
Yeah. So with all this experience and this knowledge that you have now, how is it for you navigating current relationships? What do you see keep popping up in those relationships?
Well, first of all, I have a type. Yeah. And I realize I love intelligent men, first of all. And I love men who are passionate about something because I'm passionate about a lot of things. I need somebody who's passionate about something. And whether they're autistic, ADHD, or ADHD, which is autistic and ADHD, there's this thing called special interests. And so they all have some special interest and they can talk about it forever and they're really passionate about it and they have such depth of knowledge. That's a turn on to me. I love it. But even more than that, I have realized that nobody's perfect. Not that I ever thought they were, but I could have a list of things that I want in a relationship. But the most important thing for me, I think, is to see if we connect.
Mm.
I have to have chemistry, but I also have to have that emotional and intellectual connection, right? So when I meet somebody, a lot of neurodivergent people want to info dump, which means they want to share everything they know about whatever their passion is. I love that. But you also got to give some space for me to ask questions. You got to be open to having a back and forth conversation. I ruled out a lot of men who just info dump on a date.
Yeah.
Right? I need to be with somebody who is emotionally intelligent and mature. And some of the men that I've dated have been. They've gone to therapy because they've had one, two, three marriages end. And so they decided, okay, there's something going on here. Maybe I need to go for therapy. And they've worked on some of their issues and they become more aware. I also need somebody who loves physical intimacy. And a lot of neurodivergent folks have different needs when it comes to physical intimacy. And some are asexual, just like in the general population. Some have extreme sensory sensitivities around certain things like holding hands or eye contact or certain touch. And so I have to, have that connection that is going to work for me. And then giving whoever I'm with a lot of grace and space to share with me who they are.
Yeah.
Help me understand their authentic self. Because a lot of people will mask, and that is a term used in the neurodivergent world. So they're sending their representative to the date, right?
Right.
And sometimes for a long time, all you're meeting is the representative. So the social worker in me starts asking questions, and I want an answer. I want to know. So what have you learned from past relationships? And if they're afraid to share that kind of stuff, they're not my person, or they don't want to, and they just want to talk about superficial stuff. So I've learned a lot. And I'm in a relationship right now. And we're both our own flavor of neurospicy.
I love that.
And I what I love is that we talk a lot and we share a lot. And we do give each other a lot of grace and space. And also, I don't take a lot of things personally anymore.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one for me too. I think with experience and age, it just
Yeah.
gets better.
Yeah. Because and in a lot of neurodiverse relationships, people do take things personally, but the intent of the person who's got a differently wired brain than you is oftentimes not the impact they're having. So like if I were to say to my partner, do you like this dress? And he says something like, well, you've looked better in other dresses. That's not the response I was looking for,
Yeah.
right? But he didn't mean to be hurtful, right? This
Yeah.
didn't really happen in this relationship, but in others. And the fact of the matter is, he's thinking, I know you can look better than this, so why should I compliment you even though we're about to walk out the door? And I don't take it personal anymore or personally. It is, a more blunt way of talking and I give grace and space.
I think it goes with that saying, treat people how you want to be treated. And so I think they are just treating you how they would want to be treated,
Yeah.
not how you want to be treated.
Right.
Exactly. So having, I heard that recently, actually, someone had said, don't treat people how you want to be treated. Treat people how they want to be treated.
It's so true. And that's why one of the reasons I love the love languages, because when we understand what our love languages are, and if anybody has not, I mean, the love languages have been out there but for a long time. There's 5 love languages, but then there's also 5 neurodivergent love languages.
Oh, wow.
So you can Google that and see they're complementary, but they're different. And one of them is info dumping. So if your partner is info dumping and talking to you for 2 hours about their special interest, that means they love you. Another one is penguin pebbling. And this one is really, really good because like penguins, they'll collect pebbles or little leaves and give them to their partners. So if you have a partner who is sending you memes, but not telling you that you're beautiful or that they love you or how much they appreciate you, that's probably them penguin pebbling.
Oh,
And you didn't know it.
okay.
Right. So they may not say the words, but they may be, a forager and they come in and they share with you the mushrooms that they got, or,
Right,
they're a gardener and they bring in the flowers, but they don't necessarily use words to share how they feel about you.
right.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
neat. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. There's another one, and other people might find this interesting. In with children, autistic children, it's called parallel play. So some people just use that term. You can be in the house all day together and not say a word, and your autistic partner will feel like that was a connection and that you spent time together. And that used to happen in my marriage. And I'd be like, we haven't talked all day. How can you say we spent time together?
Yeah.
But that's parallel play or being alone together. And that means a lot to the autistic partner, but to the non-autistic partner, they like want to talk. They want to make dinner together. They want to, dance in the kitchen or watch a TV show. But just being in the same house or the same room together for hours is oftentimes enough for your autistic partner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So with you, were you officially diagnosed as ADHD?
No, it's a lot of money to go for the official diagnosis. Sometimes it can cost, $4 or $5,000 depending on where you're going. Yeah, it's a lot of money. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So it's just better to have the knowledge behind it and say, this is probably what is going on with me, and do your own research. And
Yeah, if you can get a diagnosis, there are some insurance companies that will pay for it, for the autism or the ADHD diagnosis. But I don't know how common it is for them to pay the full amount. And then you want to go to somebody who has worked for a long time with adults. And if you're a woman or a non-binary person, somebody who has worked with women and non-binary folks, because it presents very differently. ADHD and autism present very differently for women and non-binary folks, very differently.
what have you discovered about yourself with ADHD in a
Mm.
relationship?
Oh
Like,
gosh. Okay, so first of all, I talk with my hands a lot, right? I can get really loud and I've had to work on that, right? And very emotional. And I can talk about 10 things at once. And I know in my marriage I flooded and overwhelmed my ex-husband always because I thought if he's listening, I've got a lot of things to talk about and I'm going to take advantage of it, right? What I didn't realize is that's not how his brain works. One thing at a time and then give him, processing time. So I've had to kind of bring some of that back and learn that one topic at a time, not to be so emotional. I really try to be more concise when I'm asking for something or talking about something because I used to talk with a lot of, superfluous words and all that stuff. You can see I'm still working on that and I probably will always be a work in progress. I also, if you were to see my resume, it's over 6 pages long because when I get bored, I got to go. So I never stayed at a job longer than 2 years. And while I was at the job, I was always looking for the next dopamine hit.
Mhm.
I need dopamine. I just need it. So I used to go on weekend trips a lot and I used to force my ex-husband to go. We moved cross country 6 times.
Wow.
Um, there's just so many things. my attention span, like he used to joke about it. We would watch a movie and I would stop it at least 5 times because I just couldn't sit still
Uh-huh.
and watch a movie through unless I'm in the movie theater. At home, I couldn't do it. So there's all these things that I now know were related to how my brain is wired. And so I've created, like I said, I'm 61. I've created an environment in my home and I've created a life that is much more conducive to having the brain that I have.
Yeah. And how do you get your dopamine hit now? Like is what is helping you?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, a lot of people get their dopamine hit in unhealthy ways, right? And I do think that I got my dopamine in my marriage through sex.
Yeah.
And I've said this on my podcast. And even though everything else could be just a total mess, then having sex, it would give me a dopamine hit and I'd feel like I could stay in the relationship a little bit longer. And I think that other people may have experienced that. So now for me, I go to the gym at least 3 days a week. And then I also have a little gym at the house. So I have weights and I have a bike and I have all kinds of other little things. It's not a big gym. I also dance in the house. Like I said, if I feel like I'm getting stressed or triggered and I can't go outside because it's 100 degrees, I'll turn on my Alexa, because if I say it, she'll come on, and just dance and move around the house. I travel. I travel a lot. Sometimes I go for the weekend to visit friends. I have friends all over, and that gives me the dopamine hit. And my daughter moved to another state. I get on the plane and I go see my daughter. And the person I'm dating is almost 3 hours away from me. So I get in the car, go to see him. So, and the beach. The beach is a dopamine hit, but it's also calming for me.
Yeah.
There's something about the energy of the ocean that's like a high, but it also brings me down. I don't know. You're shaking your head. Do you?
Yeah, I feel the same thing. I feel
Yeah.
energized but calm at the same time. It's a
Yeah.
perfect
Yeah.
description. It's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So all those things. And then doing Neurodiverse Love, doing the podcast, doing the support groups, it is a dopamine hit for me to share something or to be in a Zoom room with others who are sharing and their light bulbs are going off in their heads. And they're like, oh my gosh, now I understand what was going on. That's a dopamine hit for me too.
Helping others discover.
Yeah.
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 So, advice for listeners who may be struggling.
Mm. I think the most important thing is to be clear about what you need and want to create peace and joy in your life. I think that's been a game changer for me. And not just think it, but I always tell people I have about 1,000 notes in my phone. And I started the notes like probably 15 years ago, when we were having real challenges in our marriage. And I look back at them and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know how to calm myself down. But how far have I come, 15 years later? And I can see that. So being clear about what you want, you need, what your non-negotiables are. Like I dated a man who was a high functioning alcoholic and he had anger issues, serious anger issues. And I will never do that again, you know? Um, so knowing what you want, what you need, what your preferences are as your non-negotiables, and knowing how to regulate your nervous system, but also looking at the patterns of what triggers you and what calms you, I think is so important. Stop being with people and in environments where you're constantly triggered and dysregulated. You don't have to do that anymore. You just don't. I've given up friendships. I've said no to job opportunities. I've said no to, events that people have invited me to. If it's going to dysregulate me and make me miserable, even if they're paying me, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah, thank you for giving us that permission because I mean, that is really important to look at your life and what you might be getting yourself into and the patterns and how to save yourself that struggle and that stress.
Hmm.
So, if do you have any resources or anything that you would suggest for listeners that are hearing your story?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's neurodiverselove.com. And on the website, because I'm a social worker, for me, it's about getting resources out to the world. So on my website, I have a list of pretty much all the books that I've read on neurodiverse relationships or neurodiversity and on relationships in general and therapeutic models that I think that have been really great, or workbooks on boundaries or how to love yourself, all kinds of stuff. So the books are on there and you can see my list. I also have other people's podcasts, other people's YouTube channels, so that you can see some of the people that either I've had on the podcast and are out there doing great work, or I went to their sites to look for information when I was learning. I have the Neurodiverse Love conferences, both are available. And if people send me an email, I'll send them I don't have the code right now, for $50 off. The conferences are amazing. The first one we did in 2023, I think we had 27 presentations. And the one in 2000, this year, 2025 in March, we had 31 presentations and 4 panels. So you're getting a lot of stuff. Normally it's $97. I'll give people $50 off if they're interested.
We can put
They send me an email.
or send you an email. Okay, we'll put the
They can send me
information
an email.
down.
And my email is neurodiverselove, the number 4, the letter U at gmail.com. I also have the Neurodiverse Love cards. It's a digital download. It's 52 questions that I wish I had asked my ex-husband, and I wish he had asked me, and we had talked about these subjects. And then I have a workbook that is those 52 questions and another 52. And
Wow, Mona,
yeah,
you're amazing.
they're very inexpensive. Like the cards are $11 and the workbook's $12.97.
I,
For Yeah,
yeah.
for me, it's about getting this information out to the world. And then I do the two free support groups for the non-autistic partners. It's the first Monday of the month at 6:30 p.m. and it's 90 minutes, and then the fourth Saturday of the month from 11:30 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because folks might be watching from all over. And, I think I also do a couple support group, and that's the third Wednesday of the month. That's from 7:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think there's so many resources out there now. And when I discovered I was in a neurodiverse marriage in 2017, there weren't a lot of things out there. So just in 8 years, the field has just kind of expanded exponentially. And so go to my website. There's lots of resources. And then I highly recommend somatic therapy. I also recommend internal family systems, because we all have parts that have helped us get through childhood trauma or challenges in childhood. And those parts may be causing challenges for us in relationships now, whether it's a romantic relationship or a family relationship or a work relationship. And we aren't even aware of it because it's the only way we know how to function. So I love internal family systems too. And some people have really benefited from EMDR. I haven't done it, but I have colleagues that actually are EMDR practitioners, and that really helps with trauma too.
Yeah, my husband actually did EMDR. EMDR.
Was it helpful for him?
Oh yeah. He
Awesome.
was he was one of those that it helped him after I think a few sessions.
Yeah, that's what happens. It's amazing. That's what I hear.
And
Amazing.
some it does take longer. Not
Yeah,
everyone is the same, but for
yeah.
him it just happened to do exactly what he needed for
That's
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, so I have a lot of resources, and if people reach out to me and I can answer a question, I'm happy to. But a lot of times just coming to a support group, one of the free support groups and the couple support group, can just make a
You
world of difference.
learn so much from each other.
Yeah.
So much. So much
Yeah.
in my life, just learning about my own trauma, having friends to speak with, like, Olga, you, others. You learn so much
Yeah.
about what you are feeling, what you're going through. And you also feel not alone
Yeah.
when you see that other people are experiencing such similar things. And many times we don't realize that we have trauma from an experience
Hmm.
until someone else, we relate to someone else's story
Yes.
and, or maybe know that you were in a neurodiverse relationship until you hear someone else's story or a family member. So I really also love that idea. Support groups, I think, are really important.
Yeah, me too. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm working on a docuseries.
Oh my
It was going to
goodness.
be a documentary, but now we're turning into a docuseries. I interviewed four neurodiverse couples from around the United States, and then I interviewed three neurodiverse, well, they're couples, coaches, and therapists who work with neurodiverse individuals or neurodivergent individuals and neurodiverse couples. So the interviews are now being edited. And I have an editor working on the first two episodes of the docuseries. And then I'm going to do a fundraiser to raise the money to do the other. I'm not sure if we're going to be doing 6 episodes or 8. And then we'll make it available to the world.
A rising star. So going back to that question, how did you reframe your story? I mean, your story was completely reframed. You really did rise from this.
Yes. Yes, yes, 100%. In a million years, if you had said to me in 2017, when I discovered I was in a neurodiverse marriage, 8 years from now, Mona, you're going to be doing a podcast for 5 years. You're going to be doing all these other things, and then you're going to do a docuseries. I would have said, there is no way. I have like no technological skills at all. It's very basic what I do. And I know it was my purpose.
Yeah.
I absolutely know.
So I started this new podcast. We talked about it in the beginning. You have so much more experience, but I also feel that call
Hmm.
to do something more.
Hmm.
So I understand that feeling. You are an inspiration,
Oh, thank you.
truly an inspiration, and what you're doing to help others and to educate, and really to allow people to discover they are not alone, that what they are feeling and going through, they're truly not alone.
Yeah,
And they can learn so much from what you're offering in your podcast, your support groups, your conferences. All that stuff will be in the in a description.
okay.
But so people can get those resources. But all those things that you're doing is so fabulous.
Thank you. I love it. I love it. And most of it, I do for free, it's a labor of love. It truly, truly is.
Well, Mona, I feel like there's so many other topics and things we can speak about for hours. You are a truly fascinating woman. And
Thank you. So are
it's,
you.
thank you. And it's so amazing to see where you are. It's keeps spinning in my head because some of those details I didn't know, but I don't know what the word, I'm stunned, like how much you have done,
Thank
how
you.
much you have turned this around.
Thank you so much. And I think the message that I would leave folks with is the universe will give you opportunities when you are energetically ready.
Yes.
Okay. I really do believe that. I was not ready for any of this until I was ready. And so when you think you're at your lowest point and you can't get out of bed or you can't, go to work or whatever, know that that's part of the healing process. You don't have to stay there. You can move beyond it, but it is a choice because I could have stayed there. I could have. But yeah, it's a choice, and you need to have the right people around you, at least one person who believes in you, and you need to surround yourself with people that are going to support you and are going to be inspirational and loving and kind and give you space and grace as you heal. So critically important.
I think transitions are growing points in your life take a lot of energy. And some
Oh,
people shy away from giving a lot of energy toward that transition.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, think about it. Think about the oak tree that starts as an acorn, right? If we were to dig up that acorn every day to see if it's growing, we're not going to have an oak tree. But if we plant that acorn and then we water it and maybe a little fertilizer, and bring all the things that we need to in place to make sure that the acorn has a place to grow, we may not see all the growth that's going on underneath the soil, but eventually the tree comes out,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. The seed has to decompose a little bit, has to be okay with that change. Will I bloom into this big, beautiful tree?
Yes.
You
Or
know,
will I rot underneath the soil?
yeah, I know it's a scary thought, but you
It's
have
a
no,
choice. It is.
yeah, you have,
It's
yeah,
a choice.
it's a choice. Thank
Well,
you.
it's been a pleasure.
Thank
Pleasure
you so
talking to you.
much, Mona. I really appreciate your time, your fabulous neurodiverse love, and you can find it on Spotify.
Anywhere you listen to your podcast. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. I'll put all those resources down for you.
Okay.
Mona
Thank
K.
you so much.
Thank you.